Brought Thin Mints.
Oh.
Thin Mints. Oh. This is a wad. This is a thick mint.
Yeah.
It's quite the basin.
Ask not what your voice can do for you.
Quick shout out to my niece Ellie for the Thin Mints.
Nice.
This
Thank
episode brought to you by my niece Ellie.
Thank you for being one of our sponsors. Niece Ellie, we enjoy the Thin Mints.
If you also want a 9-year-old niece Ellie, it's too dang bad. There's only one. Welcome to Haas Boys. I got Max on my right.
Yo.
I got Mike on my left.
What's up?
Guys, we got something to settle here before we go any further, which is, what does XNDA mean?
I legit didn't know what you were going into, and I was so stoked, and I was very happy when it came to what that was.
We polled you guys this week on Instagram, and many of you got back. And Max, why don't you read some of the suggestions to us? So again, we're trying to figure out what Lewis Hamilton's stage name XNDA stands for.
Okay, first one comes in from Mo saying, extra nice dump truck.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's different.
It's objectifying.
Yeah.
He's talking about his own.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But I feel like Mo is objectifying Lewis.
That's how I took it as well.
Yeah. Which
Maybe.
which I don't know if we stand for male objectification on this podcast.
No.
So
Definitely not.
I give that a 7 out of 10. Pretty likely.
Pretty likely. Okay, yeah. I like this rating scale.
Yeah.
This comes in from Tyler. Extra non-disclosure agreements.
That's hilarious. That was my response the moment that you said his name.
Really?
Was, extra non-disclosure agreements, which, knowing Lewis, that's a pretty good name. It could be true. He loves NDAs because he's got tons of secrets.
And Formula One is a world of secrets.
Yeah, extra non-disclosure agreements. Okay, thank you for that, Tyler. I'd give that, I like it, but I'm gonna say that it's a little lower. I'm gonna give that a 6 out of 10 in likelihood.
Have another one. Xerox never designed anything.
Ooh, a little statement.
Copies.
I give that a 10 out of 10. I think that's the most likely we've gotten so far. Xerox never developed anything. A little statement. But quick fact, Steve Jobs actually stole the graphic user interface idea from Xerox.
Are you saying that he copied it? Oh. Did he Xerox it?
I love that one.
We have another one. Exceptional need for dramatic attention.
Oh, wow. That's a really good one.
Maybe not a Lewis fan coming in right there, but
yeah,
pretty great.
Making it known.
Extra?
Does he need attention? Extra need for dramatic attention.
Oh, that's
Is it because of the clothes he wears?
Just
Bono,
the way
my tires are gone.
Bono, mate.
Bono, my tires are gone.
Mate.
Why is he in the Beatles?
He just got really Liverpool.
Yeah. Bono, my tires are gone.
The tires are gone.
I think if you locked Lewis in a room for 5 years alone, we'd eventually hear his real accent. And maybe it's that. Bono, mate, my tires are all gone.
Oh no, John, my.
I'm gonna have to go home in my yellow submarine instead of my car, mate.
It sounds like a Beatles version of a Wallace and Gromit. If Lewis was made into a claymation, it would
Chicken
be that.
Run.
Yeah.
Wallace and Gromit.
Toto. Wheels, Toto.
We got to go where there's wheels.
Wheels, Gromit.
You guys are much more familiar with this show than I am, clearly.
All right, we'll do a group watch of Wallace and Gromit.
A last one.
Following Pitch Perfect.
Yeah.
Extra needy driver approaching.
Oh my gosh.
This person's coming in hot and we love it.
They came in hot as a pistol and we're here for it. Extra needy driver approaching. All right, I'm going to abandon the rating system because we got some real good ones.
Some front runners.
There's 3 of those that I think were right at the top of the pops.
Pretty good. Yeah, pretty good. We just need Lewis to come in and tell us now. So Lewis, you're listening right now.
Don't listen to episode 6. And please come on the podcast. We don't want to talk about driving, dude.
And skip past all of what we've said so far, just so you can tell us.
Can somebody just clip this out and send it to him?
Roscoe, can Roscoe please clip this out?
Who's
Send it to his
Roscoe?
assistant.
His dog.
His dog. Yeah.
You knew he was a rapper before you knew about Roscoe?
Yeah, dude.
I don't think we knew a couple weeks. Didn't we talk about his dog a couple weeks ago? We didn't know the name.
we?
And then I was watching Drive to Survive and he said the name. And I was like, that's it.
Right, we said it was Toto. We said
Yeah,
his
it was
dog's name was Toto.
Which may be true.
Opportunity
It's-
lost if it's not.
Yeah.
Definitely missed.
Wow, guys, we have the best listeners in all of podcastdom.
Very true.
Stay tuned on the Instagram account. We're going to have tons of these Q&As, man. Well, guys, we've had a super eventful week from the last time that we released a podcast.
Sure did.
Lots of stuff going on, and we are going to dive into all of it today. But first of all, we barely missed the news about Kevin Magnussen joining Haas for 2022.
Yeah.
I'm so stoked.
Why
Yeah.
did I feel like I got blindsided by that? We were so into Hulkenberg, Giovinazzi.
Why were we
and
so
Fittipaldi.
obsessed with Hulkenberg when Kevin was totally available?
Because
Clearly an option, right?
I mean, my celebrity crush might be Hulkenberg. He's pretty dreamy looking.
He's a dreamy guy.
But we couldn't see the Magnuson for the Hulkenberg trees. But Gunter did. Gunter did.
Gunter walked so we could run. Thank you, Gunter.
Well, I mean, I think that it makes perfect sense. And it's funny that we didn't even mention him. And listening back to our previous episode, I'm like, how is Kevin's name not on this list?
You listen to the podcast?
Quality control.
Oh, gotcha.
But no, when I was listening to it and I'm thinking to myself, like, yeah, why isn't Kevin on this list? Now, obviously in Formula One, if you lose your seat, you're done. This is historically what we believe to be true in the sport.
Yeah.
People lose their seat, game over.
Yeah.
So for Haas to invite a driver back is
And Roman Grosjean
unprecedented.
lost his seat in more than one way.
Absolutely.
And he never came back.
If you burn your seat, you don't get another one.
Okay, yeah. That's where it's hard and fast.
This seems like there's a
If
line
you
in the
actually
sand.
lose your seat,
I don't know where my seat went. Gunter, you lost it again.
looks like you're going to IndyCar. You lost it again?
I swear it was right here.
Yeah, if it's spread all over the track at Bahrain, then you're out of luck.
You're out of luck. To be fair, Roman had a longer run in the car than Kevin did. He had one more year than Kevin did. So,
But Roman's not coming back.
no,
We didn't even think of him because he's living it large in IndyCar.
he's got a contract. And if we're defining differences between Kevin and Roman in that way, Kevin wasn't under contract. Has he been doing gigs and deals trying to figure out what endurance championship he's going to run, what kind of cars he's going to race for Le Mans and
He was just
yeah, he ran
Daytona.
24-hour Daytona. So we did just talk about him.
about him.
And that was very present. He was very recently driving and trying to figure that out. So
Yeah.
here's the thing, though. That is a team that knows Kevin very well. So out of the gate, they know how to communicate with him. He knows how to communicate with his engineers. Hey,
huge, dude.
the front end is being a little weird. It's maybe a little bit slippery in the corners. Whatever he's going to communicate, they already know how to interpret.
Yeah.
So he's a huge win by just being able to jump in the car and immediately be able to communicate with his race engineer.
Pretty cool.
Way to go to Haas for, out of all the people that were available, picking somebody that they had history with. Because as we know, in any creative endeavor or any endeavor with partners, you've got to work out a framework and it just takes time. And so how amazing that they're able to jump in. And we're seeing some crazy results from that choice.
Immediate results. Again, I think that one of the things that's so cool there, he jumps in the car, sets the fastest lap of day 2 in testing in Bahrain, having spent no simulator time adjusting to the new ground effects car. And he's just crushing it. I mean, again, it's like one of the things that I read that was super interesting is he stated that how sore his neck was.
Yeah, I saw that.
After testing. And I was like, oh man, yeah, he probably ran the length of like 2 Grand Prix in a day and had no off-season like Formula One training. It just jumps in the car and does 2 full race lengths.
Yeah.
With 6G being tweaked on his neck the whole time.
After a year of eating Doritos.
Right. And doing like a Daytona prototype here or there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's got to do a number on your neck.
Protect your neck. in the words of Wu-Tang.
If only the Killer Bees were sponsors of Haas, they would have known.
So what were our results from testing?
Day 2, fastest lap of the day, which, there's a few factors there could play into that.
I was
But
going to say also, like, does testing really mean anything? It's fun to get stoked. But I'm like, I don't know if even Haas is doing the real thing, But like, yeah, they got the fastest lap. I don't know what day it was, but Schumacher got the second fastest lap.
on day 3.
Crazy.
It's fun. It's fun.
Either way, both of their times for day 2 and day 3 were faster than the previous qualifying time for Haas the year prior.
That's cool. to think
There's
about.
something we can
That's
put
a
in our
milestone.
pocket. Yeah, because you can't fake that.
You can't.
That's
And-
super cool.
And if you're measuring against a car that's supposed to be 3 seconds faster,
Yeah.
which was the goal, and Haas is faster than their old car by that much,
Yeah.
they've really engineered something pretty special. And Lando Norris was quoted today saying that they believe that McLaren's going to be competing with Haas for a spot in the World
So-
Constructor Champ.
Be so fun. It's race week. So we're right.
Rosik, dude.
I mean, we're actually going to see these things and what they can do.
Gosh.
So it's
I
going to
can't
be
believe
all out wild racing.
this Sunday.
All the speculation, all the talk is finally going to come down to what's actually on the track.
It finally comes to an end that Lewis stops saying, we won't be competing for wins this year.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to pee.
Sometime between now and the race.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Oh.
Really active bladder.
Wow.
Should we do something? What should we do?
We have to.
Like, should we do a live stream right as the race, before the race starts, and just like tell everybody we're just going to be live streaming and say hi?
I mean, like at 5 in the morning, 4 in the morning.
No, not the Bahrain race. Remember my story?
No.
Tell your story,
I don't listen to your
the
stories.
birth of my daughter with Roman's crash.
Oh,
Do you think he had his daughter at 5 in the morning?
No, like 8 or 9 a.m.
Okay.
Because it's a night race in Bahrain. It's
Okay.
it's the early morning here, but not like even 6 a.m. It's pretty reasonable. I'll have to look at the time.
No,
Yeah, if you want a friend to watch it with us.
that'd be fun.
Yes, it is race week, and folks, tune in with the Haas Boys this Sunday at 8:55 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. We're going to be live streaming from the Haas.boys Instagram account.
Special guest Megan Thee Stallion.
Special guest Megan Thee Stallion is going to be in the room with us.
Yep.
Which is really exciting.
She's going to freestyle the whole race.
She's going to freestyle the whole race, and our only job is to feed her as she freestyles. Apparently, she runs out of energy really quick. Anyways, that's what our manager said. I don't want to
You've never
judge.
seen anything like it. It's going to be great.
Yeah, you've never seen anything like that, I can promise. So yeah, Max, you're working on the feeding tube and everything?
Oh, yeah, it's just a feedback. She's a stallion.
Oh, yeah. So tune in with us.
Just a bunch of oats.
It's a feedback.
got
You strap it
Quaker.
around her head and she's mobile. So tune in with us, 8:55 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time on this Sunday, and join us for the biggest event of the season. Today, for this episode, we wanted to take the opportunity to do a deep dive into Kevin Magnussen, as we're going to be talking about him a lot throughout this season, and we just want to get some good background on the guy. So what are the broad strokes here?
He was like probably one of the first drivers I saw watching Drive to Survive, because Haas was all over the first season. Kevin Magnussen was on the team at that point. So where's Kevin Magnussen from?
He's Danish.
Danish.
First Danish
And
to
how-
win or first
how
to
old is he? He
race?
has a-
He's 29.
Okay, I was going to say, he has a beard, makes him look like Santa, like old.
Yeah, it's
Like
white.
an
It is very white
He's
blonde.
an old sailor-looking man.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially the
Yes.
tattoos add to that for sure. He's younger than both of us.
And he's kind of quiet,
Yeah.
which makes you think that he's older.
He needs a corncob pipe.
Oh, yeah. Can we do that?
We can make him smoke one.
Okay.
Just the helmet flying by with a little cob pipe sticking out of the visor.
Just streaming smoke.
Yeah. The brakes are on fire. No, he's just
And now
smoking
he's-
his pipe.
Please initiate smoke. From the car? No, from my pipe.
What did Kimmy say? The drink. Or
Yeah,
it's just
give me
Kevin
the drink.
Magnussen. Give me the pipe.
The drink isn't working. Give me the pipe.
The pipe isn't working.
We'll turn it on for you. The pipe is working. Thank you.
That's cool that you're familiar with him so quickly. One of the things that's crazy about Kevin Magnussen's career is it got off to a start with none other than McLaren. in 2014.
Across from
Jenson Button, I believe. So started his career with McLaren in 2014.
he replaced Sergio Perez.
That guy's been in for a while.
Which is so weird because I feel like he's so young. But
Yeah.
he's not. But yeah, 2014 he was replaced.
Wow.
Yeah, and Kevin came into the role, and Jenson was his teammate. In his first race, he became one of very few drivers to podium in his first race.
Cool.
The last driver to do that prior to him was Lewis Hamilton.
And then since then, Max Verstappen.
Correct.
Max Verstappen, first race, he won.
But with Red Bull. So he had done Toro Rosso races prior to that.
He had been in F1.
He had been in F1 as a Toro Rosso
There's a little
alongside
asterisk there that I didn't
Carlos
know
Sainz. And so they were teammates. Prior to Kevin Magnussen's podium as a rookie, the last driver to do that was Lewis Hamilton. It was a breakout first race, big time, like made a huge impact. It was in Adelaide. And that was a race that Daniel Ricciardo placed second, but then was disqualified for fuel irregularities.
Ooh.
And then Magnuson was graduated to second place.
Oh.
But this also stripped Daniel Ricciardo of
An Australian
the
win.
Australian podium
Too bad.
at his home race. So an interesting start. The rest of the year was a little bit more of ups and downs, but a still consistent drive from Kevin. And McLaren had told Kevin that Jenson was retiring and that Fernando Alonso was coming to the team.
Which didn't happen.
And what ended up happening was, and they built it up. Jenson was retiring. This was the story.
Yeah.
They had everything built up and put together for him. They've even had retirement parties for him. And as they got to December, they announced that Fernando Alonso would be joining the team alongside Jenson Button. And Kevin was out of a job.
Oh, weird.
And became reserve driver
Correct.
while trying to get into IndyCar. Yeah. Well, not trying to, but talking to Andretti at IndyCar.
And McLaren made an aggressive move to block him from going to IndyCar. Saying,
Oh, no kidding.
He's ours.
Wait, he's ours as a reserve driver? Don't touch him?
You can't have him.
Nasty.
And so Kevin remained a reserve driver for McLaren until he got a seat.
If
at Renault.
Kevin Magnussen had just driven for Red Bull and podium on his first race for Red Bull, they would have been obsessed with him for decades.
Worshipped the ground he walked on.
But just because he was at
McLaren.
McLaren, they're like, reserve driver.
Right. Yeah, Red Bull or, I mean, obviously Haas wasn't around, but one of these smaller teams, they would have worshipped him for until now.
Red Bull just has this obsession with young youth and winning young. Like, we want the records as young and winning.
That is a funny comparison to make. That, if he had been in another team, he would be a legend. I mean, he is pretty legendary, but he would be a absolute legend today because he would have been scooped up and just like cared for like a little baby bird. But since he was with a team that had a history of winning and already had the possibility of getting Fernando on, who's fighting with Ferrari, it's like, okay, we've got two legends. You've got to go, even though you're performing for us, which is so funny.
I just am imagining it. If it was in like an alternate universe, Kevin Magnussen was driving for Red Bull that first season or whatever and podiumed, he would have just been the new Max Verstappen.
Yeah.
And then he would have stayed there just like Max Verstappen has stayed there and let them develop that car.
Which is so interesting to think, like, is Max really this good of a driver? Or is there like 5 or 6 people that could have that seat and would have?
Well, Carlos Sainz is the perfect example.
And just like develop the car around Kevin Magnussen because he won or podiumed that first race and he's something magic about
Right.
him.
There was magic about him and they just focused on him as much as, poured money into him like they did Max.
What were you saying about Carlos?
Well, Carlos Sainz was his teammate at Toro Rosso when they graduated Max to Red Bull. And this is a pretty interesting part of Max's story, is a small side jaunt here. Carlos was bitter, okay? Because Daniel Kvyat gets the seat at Red Bull after Daniel Ricciardo leaves. Daniel Kvyat comes up to join along. Oh, wait, no, excuse me. When Sebastian Vettel left to Ferrari, Daniel Ricciardo needed a teammate, so they brought in Daniel Kvyat. Daniel Kvyat came in. They called him the Torpedo because he ran into Sebastian Vettel so many times in his Ferrari.
Yeah.
And Sebastian was having conversations on the pit wall with Christian saying, you need to get rid of the guy. And they listened. They replaced Daniel Kvyat partway through the season, and instead of reaching for Carlos Sainz, who had been at Toro Rosso and was the more senior of the two drivers, they graduated Max.
Do we know why?
Just because Max, there was already this stigma.
Christian had a feeling in his heart that he was about to make a best friend.
Well, but here's the thing. Max graduated straight to F1. He didn't race F2. So he skipped over it and came into F1 into a Toro Rosso seat without having to do a lot of the ladder climbing that most of the Red Bull Junior Academy did.
So he was already kind of a golden boy.
They already knew that he had a lot of potential. And so when the opportunity arose to put him in the big seat, they're like, well, let's just try it.
Wait, meaning he went from karting to F1?
I believe it was F3.
F3. He went from F3 straight to F1.
He went from soapbox derbies right to F1.
He went from tricycles straight to F1.
Drift
Which is
tricycles.
funny that he was drifting tricycles at like 17, but everybody has a different journey.
Like Kevin Magnussen.
And from what I remember about the story, and I might be somewhat telling this incorrectly, McLaren was transitioning from Mercedes to Honda. There was a relationship with Jensen and Honda that ran deep. And the guys at Honda were very interested in trying to build the team with Jensen Button and Fernando Alonso, and not Kevin Magnussen.
Funny.
And so this is where that money game comes into play, and Kevin didn't have a say or a chance.
Right. He wasn't quite such a hot topic like Max. He wasn't quite such a legend like Alonso. He just kind of got, even though he's a brilliant driver, gets caught in the middle, sort of falls through the cracks, and continued to fall through the cracks until 2021, right?
Until he landed at Haas. And then
Well, I mean, even
he
after,
struggled at
he
Haas.
gets struck from Haas later down the road.
Right. And so
For probably a similar reason, because Haas needed a sponsor.
Right.
And
he just didn't have the star power.
Mazepin had the billions behind him.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about this is that I felt like it became so obvious to me that it was clear to Kevin that the reason he was replaced by Mazepin was money. And it was clear to him that happened.
Yeah.
Suddenly his Herbie post on Instagram had deeper meaning. It wasn't just him making fun of the livery. He was also being like, screw those guys.
We'll have to repost that on our Instagram.
Yeah. It's a good one. It's a pretty good one.
It's a classic.
But for him to come back, I think that the major point is that they had that trust in him. They relieved him of duty to stay in the sport. And then the second that they got the opportunity to bring him back, they did.
So back to 2016, he's released from McLaren and goes to Renault.
Which was a team that was just purchased from Lotus at the time. And so...
And it hadn't been active, right? Were Lotus active up until 2015, or was it a dormant team?
To some extent, they were active and participating, but they were carrying the Lotus branding on the Renault car.
And Renault was decent because Red Bull was running a Renault engine when Sebastian was winning, but this was now turbo hybrid era.
Yes, and so this is a transitional part of that point. Renault had won 2 championships with Fernando Alonso, and then Renault powered the Red Bull through 4 championships. So Renault had definitely seen success through the previous era, as they had taken a few years break from the sport, which Lotus then supplied the car through, I think, a 4-year period. Renault bought Lotus out, brought the team back to the track, but now you have a brand new aero package, brand new engine, powertrain. You know, they were making the engine and powertrain, but jumping right into making a chassis meant that they were competing under completely different rules.
And had lots and lots of mechanical problems, like just about everything you can imagine.
Who was his teammate at Renault?
Palmer. Julian Palmer.
The old Jolie Pole.
Joe Pole.
Julian Palmer.
Julian. Don't you take my seat from me.
Julian Palmer was a rookie. He's now an F1 pundit who does the paddock interviews and some technical analysis and things like that these days. Kevin was there through a rough period of Renault getting their feet wet, experimenting, trying to get the car to compete.
Yeah.
So it wasn't very competitive. Also a mid-pack car, which means it's littered with accidents and lots of, that type of action.
It's one of these stories that we're just following this guy that just hits a lot of bad breaks.
And and an example of like really good drivers that could otherwise be amazing if they just had an also amazing team backing them with their car.
Right. At the right time, because none of these teams are great all the time.
Right.
I don't know. It just kind of reminds me of what I almost thought was going to be happening with Danny Ricciardo, which is like getting bumped off, being on the wrong team, and then going to another team when the other team is becoming amazing. Luckily, that didn't really happen. Luckily, that's not what we saw, but it is funny to watch the career arcs of these drivers and just see that it really is about right time, right place. It's like, yeah, Lewis is great, Max is great. I'm just saying them because they're
previous world champions.
Yeah, previous world champions. But it's like saying it's just talent would be an absolute ridiculous statement because it's so much about how they get developed, what seat they happen to be sitting in, who happens to have an open seat, who happens to have the money that they don't need somebody with backing.
Well, like a good example is kind of like Sergio Perez. He had podiumed before, right? But he had never won a race. Then he gets in he did win at the very end for Force India. But like looking at his Red Bull season last year, crazy competitive. Same as Sergio, really cool car.
Yeah.
Well, and to give him a lot of credit and something that I felt like a lot of people noticed, but, to harp on it even further, Pierre Gasly and Alex Albon both struggled to be Red Bull driver too. Sergio managed wins, managed podiums. He managed to compete. I can't say that leading up to that point, I had noticed anything that was like amazing out of Sergio, but to see him jump into a car that's built for Max and interpret it the way that he did, I'm impressed. Yeah. Guy's good.
So obviously, Renault, that's 2016, pretty rough season, rough car, a team in transition. That's not a good time for a brand new driver to enter a team, or really any driver to be on a team, as we've seen with other teams when they're in transition. It's a tough time. So from there, it goes straight to Haas and replaces Esteban Gutierrez. So he's replacing Esteban because next to Roman, he was very much underperforming.
Right. And also because Gunter had wanted Kevin from the start. So when he went to Renault, Gunter was already communicating with Kevin to try to get him to come to Haas.
Oh, I didn't know that. Do we know why?
He just thought that he was the driver that none of these other teams were seeing him as.
Oh, so that's an interesting piece of history. It's kind of like the same stuff that we see today. It's like he was Kevin Magnuson's Dr. Dre.
Whoa, yeah. Trying to find Eminem. That's tight, dude. Nice flow. Like if he'd always kind of wanted Kevin Magnuson and kind of saw a driver that no one else saw, he did it again with all of us trying to guess Hülkenberg and Giovinazzi, and then pulls off Kevin Magnuson again. It's like, they must have a really good relationship, and obviously Kevin Magnuson knows the car and the company, and so it's a good match.
And another good indicator that Gunter has a good eye for things. He really does. He's got a good eye.
Kevin has been impressive in everything he's done. I mean, with where we're at now, and we peg teammates against each other, Roman versus Kevin, they're pretty even balance. And the thing that's interesting is that, again, we see Roman go to IndyCar and suddenly be a race car driver. We never got to see him really compete at the level that he's capable of.
Yeah, totally.
He just wasn't. And he gets in an Indy car and it's like, whoa, the dude can drive.
I love that I'm discovering this Gunter Magnuson little friendship makes sense why he doesn't invite Grosjean to that dinner and just has Magnuson and then tells everyone, I tell him, don't worry.
I tell him he's not invited. Don't worry about it. Everyone, Kevin's here though.
I was going to ask, how many points does Magnuson have in his F1 career right now? Like over his whole span? Can we, off the top of your head, Mike, do you know?
He has 158 points to this point.
Oh, that's cool.
And how many podiums?
He has one with McLaren.
Just that first one. Yeah. That's fun to hear. A really competitive driver. If we can get that many points this year in the Haas, man, we are look really good.
It's doable. Now, from 2017 leading up until where we are in present day, we have Drive to Survive to thank for a reference as to what happened with Kevin at Haas.
Right. We have a ton of details in Drive to Survive. For whatever reason, they really dug deep with Haas, which is really fun that we get to see some of that relationship.
Haas just wanted any and all publicity
Yeah.
because they're the underdogs.
That's it.
Yeah.
Scrappiest
That's it.
on the grid.
Because wasn't Ferrari and Mercedes not even in the first
They
season?
told them, hell no.
Because it's like, don't show our secrets.
Yeah.
We don't need this.
We don't want cameras wandering around.
Right. Scrappiest ones on the grid. So we see we see some disappointments, we see some wins in that period.
Yeah, we overcame some hurdles.
Yeah, no podiums.
No actual wins or podiums.
No.
But like up in the mid pack is
were
exciting.
Competitive.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some highlights?
Competing with some of these top dogs that bring hundreds of millions to the table for third and fourth in the championship. So, I mean, over the course of those couple of years where the car was really building steam, they were really competitive.
Yeah.
And as we know, and we've discussed some conspiracy theories there, we feel like they took some backseat to get to where we are today.
Yeah, I love Das Plan.
Yeah, we got to do that. We got to make a sticker.
Yeah, Das Plan.
I love the sticker idea, Das Plan. That's great.
Obviously, the obstacles that we have faced in our world today have set up a different situation. But I think that while we had the development cash to build the car, I'm excited for Kevin to get behind the wheel of it and be able to make a difference and see what he can do with something that's been really well put together.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're already seeing it, man. I mean, again, like we said, testing doesn't matter that much, but if he's doing that well right off the bat with zero experience and a year off on a new spec car, it's
cool.
really hopeful. It's really, really hopeful.
It's looking good.
I've said it before. I'm so excited for this season, man. I'm so excited to see that car up in the midfield at the very least this week, man.
We're going to see it.
I'm like so stoked. For real.
The only reason I'm not tapping my feet right now is because the microphone will pick it up and then I'll be in trouble with Parker.
But you're excited.
But I am foot tapping excited.
All right, switching gears.
That's one small step for man. My life. One giant leap for mankind.
Our podcast.
That's not what you... Moving on to tech. Last week, we were talking about the rules for passing along tech. Yeah, we were talking about chassis and engine suppliers that are teams passing along their new technology to subsidiary teams. Last week, we weren't quite sure how that worked, but we just want to do a quick follow-up on what the deets are, just because we were discussing whether Ferrari had to pass along their engines immediately to Haas, or if they needed to wait a year, which was all part of our Haas conspiracy of whether Ferrari's been sandbagging. So take it away, Mike.
Yeah, so based off of what I was able to gather, and it seems as though I was pretty close to accurate here, main thing here is a contract between the teams, almost more so than the FIA, because these teams are paying big money for power units.
Yeah.
But the main point is that it needs to be trickled down to the teams as quickly as possible and with a realistic expectation.
What kind of time frame is that?
Without actually having calendar days or anything built into that, it's just the timeline of, can Ferrari have an engine for a race weekend that the other teams don't have? Yes. But only because logistically speaking, they could build that engine for themselves first and then build the rest for the other teams.
But outside of that, it's not going to be 2 and 3 weekends or an entire series.
I would say that Fred Vasseur and Gunther would be flipping tables in Ferrari if they went 3 races without the most up-to-date spec.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Yeah, super interesting. Okay, cool. Thanks for that quick follow-up, Mike.
Yep.
Closing out, we have a listener question. What's that question, Max?
We love questions. If you want to email in questions, it's doshossboys@gmail.com. The question this week comes from Sam, I guess an avid listener of our show now. He's loving the question feature. And these are great questions. This one is, ready. Is there any sort of courtesy or moral rules? Like, I would imagine because these cars cost so much money that they would rather not get crazy close to someone for fear of damaging themselves. Also, with this in mind, are there big guys that will just block the road so no one wants to get up close and damage their cars?
That's a really interesting question. And knowing that each car is, worth $10, $15 million, you would assume that there'd be some gentleman's rules, but on the other hand, they race to win. So it's an interesting question. What's your take, Max?
I'm thinking of Haas right now. And from their point of view, this car costs so much money. When Mick or Kevin gets in the car, is that on their brain? And I would think that that's something they need to push out of their brain.
Yeah.
Because if there's anything holding you back as a driver, even if it's cost of the car and you don't want to cost your company more money or whatever,
you're not going to hit the gas.
You're not going to hit the gas, and then you're not a competitive driver.
Right. What's the quote that we already have quoted twice? If you see a gap and you don't take it, you're not a race car driver.
Yeah.
And if you run into the back of your closest competitor, then you're Lewis Hamilton.
That's part of the painting he's completing, the masterpiece.
The masterpiece, yeah, correct.
And I think there's a piece of that we don't have yet.
Yeah.
But he's going to put his final brushstrokes on it this season. Turning to you, Mike. So yeah, I agree with you completely that these drivers need to push it out of their mind. But historically, do you know of any sort of unspoken agreement or spoken agreement between drivers that basically says, let's wreck each other as little as possible? Or what do you know about the culture among F1 drivers?
For the most part, the gentleman's agreement that exists is around qualifying more so than anything that's really in the race.
And qualifying is, for those that aren't aware, is the timed laps that these drivers do before the race that determines where their position is on the starting grid.
In qualifying, there are some gentlemen's agreements, but they're also loose. And some of those are about passing leading into the final corner where the start-finish line is. If there's a long queue and people are waiting to start their laps, that you're not meant to overtake in that window.
Yeah.
That you wait your turn, and then that way everyone gets a clean lap, and they get their opportunity to get a little bit of a slipstream going down the straight. There's a few benefits for everyone in that way. So they tend not to step on each other's toes in those areas because of those benefits that they're passing along.
And on a race day, I would think the thing that's holding drivers back from crashing into each other or being crashed into is because they don't want to damage their car.
Right.
And points.
I don't know what that means.
So
if they could lose points.
You would lose.
Oh, yeah.
There are regulations in the sport that also come from the FIA. So if you cause an accident and you do get a 5 second penalty from the stewards, you also get a certain number of points on your license as a super licensed driver.
I do not know what you're talking about. Do you have to get a super license? From the super DMV? This is crazy.
It's in Monaco. It's on a yacht. And there's still lines.
It actually still takes 45 minutes just to look at a sign and tell them that your eyes worked.
And then they send you back so that you can get the right documents.
Janice on the yacht tells you that you need 2 forms of identification.
Yeah.
Super license.
So a super license is something that you have to earn in order to be able to participate in F1.
Mike is just making stuff up.
I'm
now.
not. I'm just a promise.
Okay.
And I do think that this is a regulation that's been kind of an ongoing topic between an IndyCar driver. Does he need to get a super license to compete in F1 where they're so similar?
What's the governing body that's awarding these? What
the
is
FIA.
Oh, okay.
So if you obtain the super license where you can race an F1 car.
That FIA calls it the super license.
I've never heard of points being put on people's license or taken away or whatever.
A penalty point is awarded to your license, and if you get too many, you can be disqualified for a race.
I want to know now which drivers have penalty points.
Oh, and they're accumulated. They carry over.
I want to know what everyone's
So
totals is.
leading into this year, drivers do have an accumulated points that are sitting there. I think Bottas had some of the highest points from last year.
Because he caused 10 cars to go off the track.
A number of accidents a few times.
I mean, and even just little things, bumping into a tire at the wrong part of your car.
Got it. Yuki Tsunoda leading in penalty points, followed by Sergio, Max, then Nicholas Latifi, Sebastian, Nikita, Lance Stroll.
What's Yuki at?
Yuki's at 8.
Oh.
Sergio at 7, Max at 7, Latifi 6, Mazepin at 6.
I believe a race ban happens somewhere between 12 and 18 or something like that.
Oh, so you can get pretty high.
You can get a lot of points, but you can also get a lot of points.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in a race. So even if it's hitting tires, I've noticed in a few races that I've been watching in the seasons or whatever, even just this tiniest little damage on a front wing, however unintentional, even if it just was like came off like hitting a curb or something, that's going to cost a lot to fix. But it's also, he can't continue racing on that.
Can't even steer.
Yeah, it's crazy. The aerodynamics that are coming over every little part of the car, if any of that is damaged, he's out.
Yeah, and it makes the car undrivable.
They want to get around each other as fast as possible without even touching each other because the risk is so high for everyone on that grid. The risk is so high.
Again, like you said, it comes down to more than money because there's a number of factors to consider. So if you do knock a wing off, say you broke the front wing or any piece of the nose, you have to go in for a pit stop, which is going to cost you upwards of 20 seconds. Mm-hmm. It's going to take you however long from where you broke the front wing on the racetrack to get back. And then if you were in the top 10, you were in a points finishing position. Then once you've had to replace your wing, you run the risk of no longer being in a points finishing position. So the sacrifice is huge.
Right.
And so you could potentially put yourself in a really bad scenario if you're a McLaren competing with Ferrari for third in the championship. And we're talking tens of millions of dollars in a deficit just because of one nose break on one weekend.
Has a team ever had to stop racing because they can't afford a car repair anymore?
That's a good question.
I think it has happened. And they've also run out of like chassis and parts and things like that.
So it's like, yeah, it's weird. The driver in the race can't worry about that.
No.
But then outside the race, yeah, you worry about it.
Well, and we're in a new era. And that's another thing to consider is that the cost cap is officially taken effect. And this was something that Red Bull and Ferrari were throwing fits about last year, was that Bottas can bulldoze through 5 cars and that affects every team's budget.
Except Mercedes.
Except for, well, it still affects them.
It's a drop in the bucket for
but
them.
He took out 5 cars. And all of those teams now suffer because of Bottas's decision.
Whoa, yeah.
It's interesting. So, yeah, maybe this will factor into the drivers' minds from now on with the cost cap where somebody like Bottas may think twice before braking so late, knowing that he, along with everyone else, is going to suffer pretty big time from losing suspension and a wing.
Think about it this way. The gentleman's agreement that quote unquote exists in qualifying but then doesn't really translate to the race does in some form. Because either way, when you're a race car driver, you race people the way they race you. And they race you the way that you race them. And that's a give and take relationship of like, if Max Verstappen was a mid-pack driver and knowing what we know about him with his elbows out type of push people off the track type of driving style, if he was still in Toro Rosso 5 years deep, that dude would have no friends and people would be crashing into him, pushing him off track. He would have Pastor Maldonado status of nobody likes you on the track. And so there is a lot of give and take in those teams that know that are going to be competing with each other an entire race. Whereas the front teams, like we've seen in the past, they have like 5-second gaps between them at times.
It's like 2 different races happening.
Right. Which is why the mid-pack becomes something that we are so interested in, because that battle is so tight. Now, this year, we could see that at the front. We don't know.
Interesting. That's really cool.
One quick note. So the numbers that I just read off, the 8 and the 7 and the 6, that was for last season only, and they expire every 12 months. But the people that have the most ever, including expired points, are Roman Grosjean and Max at 21.
They got race bans?
No, nobody's reached a race ban because you have to reach 12 per season. And so, yeah, Yuki was 4 off last season. But
It is 12 though?
It's 12.
Oh, I see.
12 per season.
If you're a really good driver, you could basically like you just aim for a part where you know you're not going to get hit. So if you can get your front tire to hit your opponent's side pod,
Yeah.
you will not incur damage, but you will send them into the wall at Silverstone.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's interesting. And I think if you race for long enough, you'll get that dialed in. Like, I'll bet that one of the oldest racers on the track would be able to execute that on one of the younger racers at Silverstone, for example, quite easily.
And yeah, if you probably looked at their history, they probably practiced on like other people who were probably on that same team.
Yeah.
Who were new to Red Bull.
New to Red Bull.
And beating you.
Yeah.
I wonder if it would then be possible that you could execute that same corner in the same position with another driver 10 laps later and have a completely different outcome.
Well, that would be too hard to say.
But only good drivers know how to do that.
Only the best.
Thank you so much for the questions, Sam. That was a very interesting subject. Keep sending your questions to us at Haas.boys on Instagram, or dashaasboys@gmail.com. Also, we're online at haasboys.com.
That's true. We have a website.
Yeah.
That happened. That did happen. Yeah. We got a website.
There's been so much going on in F1.
Yeah.
Holy cow. We forgot about our own news.
Yeah. And keep sending them in, and we will keep answering. Join us this Sunday at 8:55 a.m. for the Bahrain Grand Prix, first of this season.
Sunday.
Kids eat free.
Join us. Goodbye.
Podcast for man. Haas Boys.
Yeah, it's just a feedback. She's a stallion.